Hello, everyone. Welcome to week 4. So we're going to practice again. Get ready for Zoom, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. I'm excited to get back together, try this out one more time. I'm sure a lot of you have a few nerves again. Hopefully those have assuaged a little bit. They've gotten a little bit better. I really saw a lot of people heavily invested a couple of weeks ago. So, and I can tell folks are genuinely trying and working hard to get the concept. So I appreciate it. Keep it up. Let's think about this week, and I have some assignments for us to look at before we get to Saturday. I'm just going to jump right in and share my screen, and we'll take a look at it together. So going over to week 4. And week 4 tasks. Here are your tasks. This is also available in the syllabus. Your tasks you'll want to accomplish. Begin to integrate advanced skills. So the sheet that I share here, the feedback form, there's a heading that says advanced skills. We'll take a look at that in just a minute. But really, you know, we worked a lot on micro skills a couple weeks ago, and now it's more like group specific skills. So I may refer to these group specific skills as advanced because they really are. It's you're moving into a situation where you're interacting with many people at once. It's just not an individual dynamic anymore. It's trying to pay attention to several people and also thinking about overlying concepts, themes that are emerging throughout the discussion throughout the day. And so, I'm hopeful this is going to be a good thing, and it should enhance your individual skill as well, because all the different variables that go into group are then condensed on an individual. So I'm hopeful that this will, I know in my own experience thinking about my learning curve, it helped me in that group dynamic than when I went to individuals. In fact, in the beginning, when I was working with individuals, it almost seemed like, gosh, what am I going to do to fill the time? Because I had 6 or 8 individuals that I was working with in groups, be it adolescents, be it adults, be it children. The time should go pretty quickly in these group sessions versus the individual. At least that's what my experience was. Yours may be different, but I need to speak from my own perspective. Please read Hutchison chapters 8 and 9, and there is some repeat in 8 and 9. 8 and 9 talk about group-specific techniques, which we'll address, and I have in this outline, I'll go over some of those. It's where if you are reading, I'll pull out some important material. And then Capuzzi and Stauffer, go ahead and read 52 to 55. So let's go ahead and look at the outline. This again covers the Hutchison book quite a bit. So your objectives are to integrate basic and advanced group leadership skills into practice. That's what we'll work on. We'll practice that this weekend. Hutchison chapter 8 really looks at 8 and 9. Hutchison really breaks down your tasks as a group leader according to the stages of group. So early on, we have this forming, engaging stage of group, forming, norming, performing, adjourning, all those, Tuckman 1965 stages. In the forming stage, which I would say you're still there, a lot of you know each other already, but we're getting accustomed to each other in group. And I worked with you a little bit to help facilitate these ideas in the beginning, using I messages, speaking very specifically, being non-defensive, exploring perceptions, speaking for each person individually. So these are some ideas to think about as you're receiving feedback from others, not just the SFA students, but just in general as a group member, because this is what you're wanting to impart as a leader to the folks that are in your group. You want them to do these things. This isn't just necessarily for you as a student in the class. This is for when you're leading groups, what you want the groups, how you want them to perform. That's what Hutchinson is shooting for when talking about receiving feedback and giving feedback. This is outside of that feedback form that you'll get based on your performance. Keep it short, keep it short, specific, avoid judgmental comments, use I feel statements. I went over that ad nauseum last week or the week before. Share how you feel and what you want. But there are some specific things, and we've already talked about reflecting, and there are two types of reflecting. I'll recapitulate that one more time. You can reflect the content of what someone is saying, or you can also reflect the feeling. And that goes into a deeper level of engagement with the group. So what I hear you saying is that you're experiencing a lot of stress at work versus you're overwhelmed. One stressful, that's an outside thing versus overwhelmed. That's an internal, it's a deep feeling which encapsulates a lot of different feelings. Hopefully that leads you into a little deeper engagement. So reflection of, and I do want the SFA students to kind of grade you. Are you on the content surface level, or are you acknowledging kind of deeper emotion? I saw a couple of folks this past week miss the deeper emotion of what somebody was emoting, or somebody was really talking passionately about a subject and then the subject changed. That would be the time as a group leader to focus the attention on that feeling. Speculation. So that's not really a term that is used a lot in our counseling vocabulary here at Northwestern. I would say this is more of a paraphrasing and not quite a summary. It's more just a paraphrasing where you're looking for deeper emotional existential meaning in the group. So as you see deeper emotional themes or content themes emerge, speculating on what those are, and the group members will correct you, or they'll flow with it and say, yeah, you get it. That's developing that cohesion. Linking, we mentioned this briefly. This is tracking themes among members, noting similarities. I heard Bob and Jill, they both shared this really stressful experience of getting ill with COVID. And I'm wondering if other people are experiencing anything similar, and whatever might come up. Using silence. I'm going to be silent on my response. I've talked about that a lot. Using silence is powerful. If you're silent, people are thinking. If you're talking, you're not allowing people to think. As a group leader, less is usually more. I had a few of you talk about being uncomfortable with conflict and dealing with conflict. And so this was week 3. We talked about that. And so there's more in this Hutchinson chapter. You're welcome to dig that out. Your job is to confront this aggression when it happens and to keep things safe, even when there's passive things going on. If someone says something, and especially on where we're at with Zoom and seeing all these faces together, if you see this eye roll and sigh, that would be time to pay attention to the here and now. Susan, I saw a pretty strong emotional reaction there. Can you describe more? Now that's going to put that person on the spot, but they need to be on the spot if they are dismissing someone sharing in group through their through their very passive nonverbal communication. I'd say that's a passive aggressive nonverbal communication, but I'm saying it's very passive because if you don't pay attention, you might miss it. Now, I'm labeling passive aggression here as sarcasm. Oh, that sounds wonderful. I don't see too many people doing this, but if you do have somebody being sarcastic, it might be tempting as the group leader to try to placate it and skate on by, but that's not your role as the group leader at that point. Then less is not more, because if you let that hostility between group members fester, it will boil over at some point. So draw attention to it as it happens. Nip that in the bud if you can. If you pick it up, it may not happen in our group, and that'd be good. Hopefully not. We're hopefully trained not to do that. Straight out aggression, name calling, personal attacks. I was in a situation where I stepped between two people who had served time in served federal time. I mean, they were serving hard time in McAllister, and they were about in a fight when I worked at 12 and 12. And they got up, and I was in the middle of them. And I kind of blacked out at a Will Ferrell moment. I said, "Can you control what that person is thinking right now?" I basically just cut it down to like, "No." "Can you control what they're thinking?" "No." "Then sit down, control yourselves." It was a tense moment. I think they did want somebody to step in. They were trying to show out, but conflict, that's definitely not a safe situation, because I felt like I could get hit by an errant punch at any moment. That can happen, and that's happened more often in adolescent and children's groups than it has in adult groups. That was an adult group, but it is important not to, as a group leader, I'm not just thinking about our class, to deal with conflict as it comes up. Sometimes you roll with resistance as it applies to you. So I've had people try to, really confront me, and I'll continue to be positive and try to roll with that resistance rather than, assert my authority. That's more my style. I know there's different ways of handling it, but that generally has worked out well for me, because at that point there are other group members that have generally stepped in to, I don't want to say rescue, but then to support what I'm trying to do as group leader. So different ways of dealing with conflict. Drawing out, helping quieter members participate. I added a few responses, a few suggestions here. You're welcome to read through those. Cutting off, you can do this non-verbally. It's harder to do non-verbally on Zoom, but if I were, to shut off if I'm in a group of people and I turn away from that person that's talking, and I'm not giving them eye contact anymore, hopefully that starts to clue in, yeah, okay, it's time to move on. Or at a time, and it depends on how much the person is rambling or off topic, or trying to steer the group away. More directly, you might say, "Let's renew our focus on the topic of group," or "I'd like to hear from other members of the group." If somebody looks like they want to say something, you might just call on them, paying attention to nonverbals. Focusing. So you can draw focus to particular, hopefully deeply emotional topics when you're group leader. If a member goes off on a tangent, you can ask them directly how that impacts them specifically today, or ask a question related to the group topic. You can ignore that as much as possible, highlighting pertinent information. So you can be selective and intentional in your reflection, and paraphrasing and reframing. We'll come back to that. Two things that I did see. I saw this in our groups. Storytelling, which you just go off and start telling a story about your own life, which doesn't relate to the group. And advice giving. Well, you know what, if I were you, I'd do this. Okay, so reframe that. Tell me about how that might work for you. Okay, or you're okay to talk about something that worked for you in the past, but you should just drop him. Okay, tell me more why you're saying that. What are you're giving this person advice. Tell me more about your own experience with that, and so hopefully elicit deeper meaning that way. Chapter 9. This is when the group is working, so you'll know, okay, what stage am I in? if people are still trying to find their roles, still trying to figure out what they're doing, I'd say that's still in the forming stage, engaging stage of group. Now, it's fun to see a group that's working, that's actually in the performing stage. You can do things to promote cohesion. You first of all model what you want from others. Model enthusiasm, empathy, positivity. As a group leader, it's important not to be sarcastic or completely down. Model that enthusiasm. It is infectious. People will respond. Be non-defensive. I still that comes from Hutchinson, but I strongly feel like that's a very good idea. I can only think of about one or two circumstances where I just resorted to authority because I want to model that empathy. Everybody's perspective is important. When there's pathology, then I feel like there's a time to confront. But outside of something being pathological or someone's trying to cause injury, be non-defensive. Use inclusive activities. So this is, thinking about what you might want to do. If you want to think about something that would be short, that would, maybe take 5 or so minutes of your time to get everybody on the same wavelength, whether that's a breathing exercise, whether that's, thinking about things that are currently impacting someone, writing them down, thinking about ways that, they interact with family that's positive or negative, just different things that uh, you could do to get some folks to be on the same page uh, as you move forward. So these are intentional engagement activities. Here are some signs that your group is working. You have this cohesion, you have this trust. It starts to work without you. Really, it may feel awkward when you're like, I've got to get all these things together. I've got to demonstrate that I know what I'm doing. I've got to link. I've got to, have this activity. I've got to use silence. I've got to cut off. I've got to draw out. No. Take a breath. You don't have to demonstrate all those things to pass this class. The better part of that would be to, especially if your group is working, to let your folks go, to let your folks, if they're being therapeutic and relevant to group and topic is going well, then less is more. If people are not very engaged or people are not feeling safe, that's when you might need to do more. So don't feel that so much pressure. As I've had people think about, I've got to do this, I've got to do this, I've got to do this. Be in the moment with the group. That's more important than to think about. And I've seen people actually, crash and burn, not crash and burn, but just do worse by intentionally trying to go down the checkbox to make sure they demonstrate all those things on that sheet, on that feedback form. Just you be you, let the group be itself, and do what you can. That's more important. So you'll notice a sense of shared purpose. The group will have shared goals. I saw this already begin at the end of Saturday. Positive norms prevail. Members support and empathize with each other. Again, I saw a lot of that. Acceptance of individual differences instead of ostracizing. So if someone comes up and they really have a different experience, or people maybe have a rough experience of them, that may need to come to the surface and that may need to be fleshed out in the form of conflict. But if there's passive aggressiveness and things, that's not a sign that the group is really working. There's open self-disclosure. People feel comfortable sharing, giving and receiving positive feedback. So these are signs that your group is working. Now, there are a few things that you can do in a working group. So this comes from you and the group members to each other. When the group is working, you've modeled what you want from them, and they're doing some of this themselves. Labeling feelings, acknowledging feelings, that's going deeper into the group. Labeled praise. This may seem like an appraisal, and it is. but in group it reinforces desired behaviors. Susie, I'm really happy that you shared, that situation with your partner, because I know that took courage, and I know that's something that's been on your chest for a while. It shows that you care a lot about this group, and you're devoted to healing. So that's a little bit different. Now, cheerleading not from the group leader, but from, you got this. That's okay. That's like I said before in our first class, there are times when people just need to be people. And group is to allow those group members to just be each other, be supportive of each other. That's okay. There may be a brainstorming, and I've done this as a group leader. I like to come up with some ideas that could help Fred. What are some things that Fred could do in this situation that might work or has worked for, maybe instead of giving Fred advice, tell about things that have worked for you. As group leader, you might be able to facilitate a deeper discussion, or tell me how in a similar situations might have impacted you or how you responded. So I think I'm sharing the wrong screen now. Let me make sure I'm sharing the right one. Yep. Okay, there we go. Deep reflections, intuitive paraphrasing. So that's where I was going with the, there was one where you're speculating. But sometimes you're not speculating, you just feel it. You feel it as the group leader. This topic deeply touched us all. I've noted each member almost on the verge of tears talking about this. Whatever, and that's kind of a summarizing too, because at that point you've acknowledged what's happened, and you're changing and shifting focus to something else. Summarizing, as even the book will put, that's something to do toward the end or when you want to shift topics. So if you have an introductory activity, you might summarize that and then moved into like the main point of your group, and also summarize at the end. That's important. Self-disclosure. Use this exceedingly sparingly unless you're a group member. If you are, I have only used self-disclosure in a very, very rare circumstance. And usually, if I'm sharing self-disclosure in a group setting as a group leader, it's because it has gone off of the rails. And I am just at that point, just being genuine. And usually the self-disclosure is not something about my life. It's about how I'm experiencing the group right now. It's not like, well, I did that. That's not the time. Don't use group as a time for you to become a group member when you're the leader. Your job as the leader is to evoke and elicit responses from everybody else. Immediacy, attending to the here and now. Jill, I noticed that your countenance changed. What's going on for you? I sense the group is really tired today, or is just really drained after what we talked about. That brings everybody together. As you're the leader, that brings everybody together in that sense of universality. Using silence again. Reframing. Reframing is important if somebody is trying to run away with a group, or you're trying to bring out certain topics. So you don't want to misconstrue what the person is saying or misportray, but if you can reframe something that somebody's talking about, that's useful, because it can link and form and establish cohesion. And I've already talked about those. So gang, that is our week 4 outline, and that's to help you with what the reading is. Here's our feedback form again. You're welcome to look at this. Even though I mentioned the advanced counseling skills, deepening the focus, really paying attention to the underlying emotional content versus just the content, informational content, that can be important. I really, if you want to practice any and all these things, that's fair game, any and all. If you do use an activity, Very important that you leave space for process, for people to for group spontaneity, for people to disclose if they feel like it and have more of an open conversation in 5 minutes with this person, 5 minutes with this person, 5 minutes with the, no, 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 no. You're not teaching. You are facilitating discussion between folks, between adults here. Lastly, for week 4, here's your discussion board. Think about the advanced skills, and you can use all those skills. Don't just and I might change that a little bit. Which one might be easiest for you to demonstrate? Which one might be most difficult? Think about your group and the dynamics that are emerging. What are some things that you can do to embrace and excel in your role and during your time as group leader? So, Kang, I'm looking forward to spending time with you again. We will be on a tight ship. You will be leading, I would say 40 minutes. I think that'd be appropriate for people to lead. There are 6 of you. We were in class about 6 hours. 35 to 40 minutes. That leaves a good amount of time to process what happened, 10 to 15 minutes. You'll probably need more time than you did last because you only led like 20 minutes last week. So you'll need some more time to think about it. And I will see you all Saturday. So take care. Reach out if you have any questions between now and then. Remember, get your first discussion post up there before Thursday at midnight. Really important. So I'll see you.